To this now, the business community and government seem to have found each other on crucial issues that the private sector believes will bolster South Africa's economy after President Cyril Ramaphosa met with business formations on Tuesday. At a briefing on the outcomes of this meeting to discuss work that is being done to deal with issues related to transport, energy, crime and corruption. The business organizations such as BUSA and BLSA pointed out that these sectors, or should I say these key sectors, are very important to kickstarting the country's economic growth. Let's discuss this now with my colleague Ziyanda Ngcobo, who attended that briefing. Ziyanda, good evening to you. Business relations, or should I say relations between government and business, can sometimes be tenuous.
Yes.
What makes them believe that they can work effectively this time around?
Well, Paul, you'll remember last year was quite a bleak picture that was being painted, whether you're talking about the increase in interest rates, the GDP growth, the economic, and many other economic indicators telling us that we're on the brink of a recession. This week we found out that we just missed it by the skin of our teeth. But the point is there was a stage at which there was a consensus that something needs to be done. It's interesting because this is an initiative that is 9 months old. And has identified 3 key priorities. Energy, of course, with the load shedding issues, crime and corruption, which deals with issues of sabotage, for instance, at our power plants, but in general as well in the financial sector, as well as the transport and logistics sector, which would deal with the issues of the freight rail network and those, backlogs at the port terminal. So in those 3 sectors, there has been a coalescing, it seems, through the feedback that we've got today of the many work streams that already exist. I got the sense that this is just a coming together of the National Energy Crisis Committee, the Joint Initiative on Crime and Corruption, and the Logistics Crisis Committee that already exist in dealing with these issues. So let me run you through a couple of stats. So you'll know that 47 billion has been set aside by Treasury at Transnet. That was announced late last year. But Pindi Baleni, who is the DG at the presidency, says if they fix just these 3 things, there has the potential to create 3 to 5% GDP growth and 2.5 million jobs by 2030. The question is, how sustainable is this? How long will they keep going at this, given how tumultuous the relationship between government and business has been, especially with this administration? And how different is this to what is already existing in our systems? Yeah.
So I took some time out to have a look at your story specifically, and perhaps whether this relationship between business and government is so strong as to possibly even have a name. And so it is termed the Private Sector Participation Framework.
Yes, and that's finalized now.
Right.
Yes.
It's an election year, Ziyanda Ngcobo. Can business genuinely invest at a time when most people believe that business is possibly going to adopt a wait-and-see approach before they can commit their monies to anything? That's the question.
I think when you look at these sectors that are being discussed, I don't think it requires a new government to usher them in. The reality is that you need electricity to get the economy going. I don't think there's any government, whether it's a coalition government or whether it's a radical government that comes in, which is some of the fears. The issue of electricity needs to be resolved. It's a basic economic question. Even in the same issues of crime and corruption, you are not going to get investment, regardless of whether it's before or after elections, if there's a sense that if I plow money into this country, that money is going to disappear in one way or the other. So the consensus, I think, here is that We need to just get the basics right, which has not been happening. Even when you look at, the Transnet port and rail terminals, it's at a basic level that things have fallen apart, which is why business has plowed all these resources. How much of their resources is maybe perhaps the question you could be asking in terms of the initiatives, that get taken up. But of course, there needs to be a conclusion of the already existing programs. But this is literally just a resolving of issues that are currently existing. And maybe some could argue that have long been existing. So why did it only take the last 9 months for business and the government to come together and finally agree? Because there's always sort of they may agree with the diagnosis but may not agree on how to resolve the issue. And we remember that debate with the IPPs. And then finally the government, there was some kind of a pushing of, increasing the scope of megawatts and how many megawatts you could get. So maybe you're trying to allude to, is the government only now trying to get things going as they wrap up the 6th administration? Well, I'll leave that to the viewer at home to decide.
Well, it's amazing, the figures that are being thrown around.
Yeah.
If the basics, just the basics, were to just be gotten right, 3 to 5% GDP growth is what is anticipated. These were the words of Phindile Baleni. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct. I found also quite compelling the trite, I'd say, and forthright presentation by Coalescing. He's the new president of BUSA since the end of February. And he was reflecting on how the new appointments at Transnet since the exit of Sizam Zimela and Portia Derby has created a great turnaround. But many people could argue, well, when Sizam Zimela and Portia Derby started in their positions, there was a big hoo-ha about how much experience they're going to bring, Derby wasn't her first rodeo at Transnet. So how different is a Michelle Phillips and a Russell Bakkies? What difference are they going to make? But they're saying the forecasts are different in terms of, for instance, the freight rail network moving from mid-October last year from around 142 million tons, and now we're sitting at around 150 to 150 million tons. So maybe there is some change there. In fact, they've now concluded their freight logistics roadmap, which is now going to give a clear plan of where and how to fix the issues, but who are the key role players. They've brought back a lot of the old hands that used to run Transnet and Eskom to come and assist with training, but also putting them in key positions, CE positions, chief executive positions, to come and bring about a turnaround. I suppose this is not a new story that we've heard, Koli, so I'm not sure whether or not this is going to bring about confidence, but, we heard them speak about the economic regulation and transport bill, which was passed just last week on the 29th of Feb. It's sitting on the President's desk. And that will also allow for the transformation or to change the systems of parastatals like Transnet in terms of how they go about doing their business. But these things take time and they need money. And will that confidence still be the same after elections?
Ziyanda Ngcobo, thank you very much. Talking about Transnet Freight Rail. That's the key business unit within Transnet. We'll see if things are indeed going to turn for the better. That's my colleague there, Ziyanda Ngcobo.